Welcome to Small and Massive Podcast. Today's guest, Charlene Hegarty, label boss, music manager, music project manager, tour manager, festival coordinator, mother, and all-round music legend. You're welcome.
Oh, thanks, Paddy.
So, Charlene, for people out there that don't know there is a vibration around this area that seems to draw people into the music industry. You're just from down the road in Maghera. So tell me, when you were growing up in Maghera in your young days, what was it? You were into music. What music were you into, and what sort of got you that wee vibe that I maybe could look at this as a career in the future?
Yeah, I'm gonna blame my mum. There was always music in the house.
Do you want to give your mother a wee shout out? Her name?
Of course, Charlene Hegarty, the love of my life.
Nolene,
great, strong woman.
You are legend part 2. Part 1, she's a part 1 legend.
She's the original. She's the OG.
She is the real deal.
But there was always just music in the house, Paddy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't remember a time when Dolly Parton wasn't blasting out when Mummy was firing the Hoover around the place. Do you know what, actually?
What was the big song you sung along to?
I credit the Dolly Parton Hoover combo for why I can fall asleep and stay sleeping anywhere. Like, background noise doesn't bother me. I think that was how my mum kind of, whenever we were kids, she would fire on the Hoover to keep us sleeping and then put on Dolly Parton for herself. And the combo just worked. But no, Dolly was a big fixture in our house. And then Meatloaf, like, there was never...
What's big one to get everybody going? Bad out of hell?
Aye, or like the... was it the ballroom dance? I just thinking about that, like, chorus. I don't even know the names of the songs, but like I could hum them.
Let me sleep on it. Is that the one? No.
Is
that the one with Cher? No, that was a different one.
There's one with that. Yeah, he's done a couple of, like, he's a monster of rock music. I know.
But see, actually, he brought theatrics. You know what I mean? And he seemed to have that thing, that sort of, like, it was all, and obviously Jim Steinman being a brilliant writer, it just seemed to click.
Yeah,
you know?
Honestly, like, I remember lots of visuals as well of, like, Meatloaf and different, like, seeing him performing as a child. Like, I grew up in the late 80s, like, so he was a big presence at that point. And Queen as well. Like, I remember, like, just seeing Bohemian Rhapsody, the video for the first time, freaking out. Like, it was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen as a child.
These heads just appearing.
Totally. Couldn't make sense of it. There was coffins flying about the place. Just, I wasn't ready for it, but it was there. But it's just, like, music was just all around. And, like, you know, we didn't go to music concerts or anything like that. You couldn't afford it. Like, it just wasn't a thing. But music was always on the radio.
Access wasn't there.
Access wasn't there, Paddy. Like, it was,
infrastructure wasn't there either.
Totally. And, like, my parents wouldn't have been, you know, commuting to the Ulster Hall in Belfast. There would have been, like, a kind of knowledge gap there, and even that was maybe happening. And again, the affordability, and also, like, probably the fear, I would say, fair as well, of travelling to Belfast, because, as you say, I grew up in Maghera, and it was safe because that's where family was, and everything else outside of that was, you know, maybe a bit more fearful in the context of my mum and dad's upbringing, you know, through all the troubles.
And I understand that. And because what actually was happening there was your parents were transcending down what actually they had to go through. And just, you know, because sometimes you would hear a lot of stories from the cities of what it was like, but actually it was quite awkward in the rural areas as well.
It was.
You know, trying to even thumb to a local disco could have took half a day, you know,
Totally.
because it was just things were happening. And this is in a small area like South Derry, like where we're from. And I suppose you're totally right there. And even though at that time, as years went by, things got more settled, you had to understand that that's where your parents were from. That was the time that they were in. And what would even happen there, your parents probably would have been going to the local clubs rather than... Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. That was their social life. So they were seeing, like, show bands and stuff. But obviously, as a child...
Which was massive in the 80s, the show bands. You know,
and they had a really good social life. They would have loved being around music a lot. But as I say, as a kid, I wasn't brought to that. You know, so I was like a teenager before I actually got to, like, music concerts and stuff. And
who were you listening to then at that time?
Paddy, this is right. So, like, this is probably going to offend a lot of people because it was just complete pop music, like the biggest box pop music you could ever.
God, are we talking a boy band? Are we going to stand up here and do a wee swip?
All of it. Like the Spice Girls arrived massive in South Derry. Like, for me, it just felt like they just arrived in South Derry and the rest of the world was unaware.
They didn't know about Porsche, Bixie and all the rest.
They were massive in Maghera. Like, that's all I can say. The Spice Girls just suddenly arrived. I think it was like SMTV Live or one of the Saturday morning shows.
Tell the world out there, we're talking a small rural town here, right? A country town, right?
Oh, aye.
So are we talking dressing up like them, everything?
Everything.
So who was your Spice Girl friends and how did you make the band together?
So me and my best friend Aidan and Mark, and I lived at number 7, they lived at number 11. I remember whenever the Spice Girls played that Saturday morning, it's their first ever TV performance, I sprinted out of the house up to number 11 to go to Mark. And did you see that? Did you see that? And that was it. Like it never stopped from then.
Yeah.
And into our like adulthood, we still buy Spice Girls tickets and love watching them on the TV. It was just, that was a seed that was sown very young.
Yeah. Which one were you then? Which one did you become?
Go on, guess. What do you think?
They're going to give you posh Spice.
No. And actually...
Were you wouldn't be scary, Spacey.
I was.
Were you scary, Spacey?
Yeah.
You don't have the face to look scary.
Well, that's a very nice thing to say.
Don't
but
mention it.
I think if you talk to some people who work with me, they might be like, yeah, scary Spice, and that might make a bit of sense to them. But I just loved the whole Spice Girls thing. It was such a buzz. But as I say, Paddy, that was my kind of... I didn't see the Spice Girls whenever they first came about. It wasn't until I was in my 20s and they reformed that I got tickets. But I'll tell you a ridiculous story of how deeply impassioned I was about music and how none of it made sense. I was in first year, I think, at school whenever Take That broke up. And for anyone who was a pop fan...
Did you have a wee moment? Was there a wee moment happening?
My ma had to put me in the car outside the chapel in Maghera.
Did she drive you to the monks? No.
She put me in the car away from passerbys just to break the news to me. And I screamed in that car and I clawed at the windows looking out. How could anything...
Where's Gary Barlow at?
How could it happen?
Where's Robbie? What happened?
It was ridiculous. But anyways, pop music was a big thing.
But you know what that's showing? What you're saying about the Spice Girls, I suppose, even in my days, I could name certain artists from a certain era that you just went, wow, and that's that moment where music and the whole atmosphere of music and the visuals of it capture you, and there's nothing wrong to you at that time. They were huge, and that was an era, I suppose, where the boy bands were huge, and I'm sure around Maghera was there a few Robbie Williamses floating around in the day?
Of course, everybody had partial eyebrows at a certain point. And
in my days, partial eyebrows meant you could root off at a party and you woke up and one of your eyebrows was gone. Ask your parents about that.
I've seen a few of those parties too.
I sat beside a boy one time, right? So let's call it an aftermath party, right? And so we were sitting at the bar, and it's quite hard to keep a straight face when you're looking at somebody and they've just been katangoed. They've just cut somebody's took her eyebrow out. And he was sort of looking at me and he goes, "Are you looking at me strange, Paddy?" And I said, "No, lad, I'm not at all." He says, "Is there something wrong with my face?" I says, "There's nothing wrong with your face, lad. It's a lovely face." And so next thing I was sitting again, and I looked again, and when he turned around again, he'd lost half of the eye. They left him half a wiper, which had no common sense, Charlie, right? And so when he went to the toilet, he obviously came out and said to me, "Why didn't you tell me?" I says, "Tell you what, I've no eyebrows. How am I going to go home to my mammy with no eyebrows?" And it did look a bit weird.
Oh, his ma be ripping.
It must be do you think it was just a country thing, or was it a universal thing, that cutting people's eyebrows off?
I have no idea, but I just witnessed a lot of it. All the parties were fighting with wire, and there was a few kind of random offenders in that group in terms of taking eyebrows off people. He did it good and often.
Do you want to name and shame?
Not naming them. They know who they are.
Do you want to give initials?
They know who they are.
You know who you are. You people that cut eyebrows off on tour with Charlene. They know who they are.
They know who they are.
And would these people have been taking eyebrows of people that were unaware that their eyebrows would have been taken off in the first place?
Sure, the best ones to take the eyebrows off are the ones that are sleeping and just, the party's ended.
Thrown away there.
Just a wee memoir for the next morning.
That person lives nowhere near this party. So when you were growing up then in Maghera, you were saying your interest was more musical and being inclined to musical. So what was your first gig then that you would have went to? Would it have been localised gigs, or was there a gig that you went to, just happened, you go, "Now I've arrived, I'm in Ulster Hall," or wherever it would have been?
Yeah, so I was quite young. I was in first year, and again, first gig was a big pop concert. It was Westlife in the Odyssey, and sometimes I don't like admitting that, but I'm totally, fine with it now, because
that was your growing up.
It was.
You should never be ashamed of what or how you acted in them days for where you are now.
No,
at the
totally.
End of the day,
and do you know what? It's just because I hold really good company and really bad company, and some people's first gigs were like Pulp and like, you know, the Rolling Stones and whatever, and you're like, God, that just can't be topped. That's my truth. My first concert was Westlife, and I was with my mum, and we were going with her. We were her plus ones. Like it was for her, and it was just like, I remember at that point though, Paddy, a few things stuck with me. Like, it was just the feeling. Like, anybody goes to the Odyssey. Like, I've brought friends to see pop concerts who don't like the main musician on stage, but they can't help but just be amazed at all everything that's going on with it, you know? So
the lights and all of the sound and atmosphere with people.
Aye, so that started it. And then Pink was another big artist.
Great
like,
artist,
I remember,
strong artist.
Adore her to this very day.
And a very strong, independent
incredible
lady,
yeah, and like, I attribute a lot of how I feel about my capabilities to her influence. Like, I don't feel like there's things I can't do because of gender or anything ridiculous like that, and I have to be honest,
she's been a positive voice for you then
from the start. Like, she first arrived in like 2001 or whatever, so I was only a baby. Like, I was only 14, 15 at that point, so it was very...
But you were looking for something then. You were you were just at that age, you know, that age where you're kind of you know, it's like in a male sense, I can nearly grow a beard, but I can't.
Totally.
And it's not really a beard or a thing. It's just that transitional time. And then, so she was someone you looked up to.
Yeah, I was open to that influence, and she just arrived like this most amazing, like, she just said the things that were important to hear to my kind of 15-year-old mind. And I guess at that point then, that was us. We were bonded, and then every album after every album, every tour. So that's when it really started, Paddy, if I'm honest. Like, at that point, me and my friend Aidan, I was 15, and we were getting the train down to Dublin to go to her gigs, to queue outside the Point. It was called then, it's 3 Arena now.
That's right. And I remember the old Point,
We were in that queue from like 7 a.m, Paddy. We had left Maghera at like 5 to get down to be in the front row. It was just chasing that buzz of the live show. And I remember being in the Point and watching riggers kind of up and down the trusses, and just in my mind going, well, surely there's something in all of this big engine that I could do. Like, and I remember just being really kind of, but you know, as I say, that was just the start of it. Like, me and my friend Aidan had this hostel that we stayed in Dublin. It's called Abraham House. It's still there. And I remember the man who used to always answer the phone, because, you know, we didn't have mobiles then. Like, you just rang good old landline, and he knew me as Charlene.
You had to speak to people. Oh my God, you have to speak to people. It was shocking.
But it was part of, like, I look back on it now, it was almost kind of this romantic notion, but like, he knew me as Charlene from the North. I was 15, I was 16, we were booking into this hostel, and we were just having the absolute best time, doing really quite innocent stuff, going to a gig, getting back to the hostel safe.
It's a whole, and I would imagine the whole build up to that.
Totally.
I mean, because I do know what that's about, because I remember the first big one I went to was in, like, I went to, I seen Ozzy, and there was an old, what do you call it, leisure centre, Macefield.
Wow.
And there was a pile of, I don't know how I'd put it, religious minded people telling me why I shouldn't have done to see Ozzy, but all I could hear in my head was fucking Ozzy singing, and the growing up with my brothers, Black Sabbath, you were saying about your parents, so there was there all of a sudden, oh my God, this is a singer of this band, and he's in Belfast. And as you said earlier on, why I'm bringing it up is because we left like in the earliest in the morning to try and actually get to Belfast on time. Totally. How did we get home? I cannot remember, but we got home. How did we get to the places that you got the thumb to go home? I don't know. We got there too. And so we got home, but it was excitement of leaving a small rural town. It sparked that kind of, who puts these things on? Do you know, I know what you're talking about.
Completely.
And then I suppose it takes bravery then to jump from where you were to, you know, as looking at artists, to actually doing it yourself.
Yeah.
And that's, I suppose, where I'll bring in, going back to first meeting yourself, was at Peter Fleming's at Schism. And I'm sure at the time, I know in Maghera, it was strange. You had this building, and it was just right round the corner, and it took up the whole side of Maghera, and it was Schism Promotions, I think, or whatever. But there's a lot we could talk about Peter, and he's done a great lot of stuff for the music industry. So how did you go from, I suppose, wandering around Maghera, mad into pink and bat out of hell. You know what the bat out of hell? You probably your mum could tell. Your mum could tell you there was probably a time that every Opel Ascona, the Wonder Down, was there playing Born in the USA or Bat Out of Hell,
totally.
And the arm out. You know, just for people out there wondering what kind of music did rural people listen to. Good music, and sung out. They all sung, and so. How did that begin for you? You know, so what school did you go to? Maghera to school, and then did you go to any like Rennie or convent or any of the rest of them? Or
so I was in St Pat's, Paddy, and I did my GCSEs and did well at GCSEs and had to pick to go on for A levels, and like I suppose. To be honest, there was probably an expectation that I would go on then to university because nobody had done it in my family, and there was a hope that somebody would. But the problem for me was that the live music had such an impact that I already felt that I wanted to move off course. So, academically, I was moving towards veterinary, and it was, all my subject choices were aligned with that. But I dropped out in lower sixth. I just decided, no, I know my heart's telling me this isn't what I want. My heart's taking me in the direction of music, which was a horror for my mum. Dear lover, like it was...
Yeah, well, it's just a big... I suppose other people are getting into their mammies or their daddies or their mammy or they're just their daddy, and they're saying, I'm going to do this. And I suppose if you look back... I suppose in rural areas, I can only speak on behalf of this area, and I'm sure it was the same in your homeland, Maghera, there were certain pathways.
Of course, yeah.
You were supposed to take. And then you've got pathways that people fell into, but they were still kind of guided or pushed. But when you come out with something like, I'm going to do this, and they're automatically looking, and they've got no other people to look at and go,
no references.
We Charlene was doing, we Paddy was doing that, Tiernan was doing that. There's no, and I know we're speaking to the guys now. It's still the same, in a way to try and commit to the creative industries as a kind of a, you're seen as, well, what are you doing?
Totally. Mummy was worried that this was a notion, a hobby, all the different things, because we had nobody in our life. Everybody was, had traditional jobs, if you like.
And they're good. There's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely
as we say,
not.
It's really important that we say to people that there's nothing wrong with any traditional route. It's just that this podcast is about discovering your story, Charlene, and how you came about it, So,
and I love my mum and dad, and I think a hard work ethic always prevailed in our house. The only thing I could assure Mummy was that I wasn't, that I'd thought this through, that I'd researched it to death. Because as you say, see in my careers class, I raised it with a couple of, my careers teachers who I'm interested in maybe moving into music. And all you're given then is a prospectus to go away and perform music if you play it, and then ultimately become a teacher of it, Whereas like, that's not what I want. That's not what I'm into. And at that point, because I had dial-up internet in the house, I was aware that Lippa in Liverpool existed and they were offering a music business management. I was aware that there was an offering down in Bangor as well with music business as part of the tech.
A good course over the years too. For a lot of artists well known now have went through that course together,
So I'll tell you, that's what twigged it for me, Paddy. I finished in lower sixth, not going back, and then I joined that following September. I got a house in Belfast, so all the year above me were moving down. So I moved down with a friend of mine who lived in that year, and we
How did that feel at that time?
Unbelievable! I can't explain the place we lived in. We shared with rats, like it was horrible. Was
that Rats the rock band or Rats?
Rats.
Sorry, I wasn't sure.
My dad never forget whenever he came down and he found rat poison behind the cooker in the house.
Oh my God!
Oh, he was just beside himself, but sure, you couldn't tell me otherwise. This was happening, either way. So I moved down to Belfast, got my own place whenever I was 17, and started attending Cirque in Bangor, and just became immersed in the world of it. Met the best people. That year on my year group was Mike Mermika,
there we go,
and Kieran, who went on to form Mojo Fury with James. Who else was there? Jeff Robinson.
You said you never had any band performances. No, you just tell the world out there. There was one wee band performance, you and Mojo and Kieran, wasn't it? It was very short-lived, Paddy, for everyone's benefit. But I was. Was it instant stardom or just? It's not for me.
So the course I signed up to had like a performance element. And I was like, I can fluff that. Just give me the business module. Show me what a tour manager does. Show me what a manager manager does. Show me all them. So I got distinctions in all the management type stuff because that's where I knew my heart lay. And Paddy, it was bad, but I threw a bit of backing vocal at Mojo Fury once for a performance, and I played tambourine. Yeah. And that's the extent of my musical performance history to date, and I can stand by that. That's a promise. But anyways, that course was life-changing. Genuinely, I met the best people and have friendships out of it. Like Jeff Robinson and I are still, collaborators, friends first,
Just for people out there, Jeff, I know way back from the day when I remember it was PR, isn't that right? And he's still in...
Oh, he's still in it. And he's one of the best in the country. And, his clients speak for themselves. Like he's worked with Answer, he's worked with the 1975 Wolf Alice. He does all the new Pagan stuff for me.
Yeah, Wolf Alice up for Mercury this year as well, isn't
Totally. He does Row, Kit Philippa. So he's just a great fella. But I earned those kind of friendships through that course in Bangor, and also then just the wide range of gigs I was now going to. Now, just going to rewind a wee bit because I want to talk about you. The G sessions in the Cellar Bar. Before I moved to Belfast, that was the catalyst as well. Like being able to come down to D-Town on a Saturday night.
With a wise crowd all the time.
Oh my God. Like I'll never forget those days. They were an absolute buzz and really important for me. And actually my brother Michael as well. He kind of grew through those nights.
There's pictures of you and at them.
Just the best.
But I think that, I suppose... for us, that was important because I suppose it's like that transitional thing. You were down with a good self, supporting it, and then all of a sudden you were in Belfast and you were seeing that there was a different scene of movements all around. I was talking to Cara about there was different places in Uri who had gigs. So hopefully, if things open up again, there will be pockets like that where people will go, let's try a wee gig in this bar that's not working, or let's try something that, just in areas, because I think... that time back down then, I suppose it helped too for us. It was about getting the bands out of the cities, and trying to, like you were saying, we didn't have access. Like, I know it was hard to get home in daytime, but that's the type of town it is. You look for the party after it and hope you can get home on the Sunday.
Oh, do you know what was grand? We had Mummy on speed dial and me and Michael were fine. But honestly, Paddy, they were the best of days. Brilliant. Like, and you learned a lot of bands through going to G sessions and seeing what new bands are coming through. And some of the bands that I still love now, like It's Watch From Afar, Fighting with Fire, like some of their first gigs were at, in the Cellar Bars. So it was really, that was really important because being from Maghera and having somewhere to go, like Bryson's as well was another really top spot, and it's obviously not there anymore, but like all those we kind of orbits all around this new world I was starting to find for myself was really, really exciting. But my ma was still really terrified that I'd made a bad decision. So she worked in a cafe in Maghera Main Street called Snack Shack. And she was overheard one day talking to one of her regulars about her worries about me, actually, and going, my daughter's down and she's moved to Belfast. She's going to Tech and Bangor. She's got no musical, she doesn't like to play instruments and she can't sing, but she wants to do music. And it was Peter Fleming was in Snack Shack at that point and overheard her.
There you go. And
bless him. He came up to her and he said, tell her to give me a shout. Sure, I'll chat to her and see what's going on. And as soon as she rang me, I blazed up the road in the 212, met with Peter, and he offered me a start. Brilliant. And I didn't really know what I was supposed to be doing, Paddy, but I just knew that I'd worked so hard at whatever opportunity I was given. So the irony being, I left Maghera to get my music career started in Belfast, like the big smoke. And I ended up still keeping my rental in Belfast because I had just so many good friends there, and I was loving the fact I could go to gigs every night of the week. But I used to get the 212 from Belfast back to Maghera. I had a wee BMX bike I used to put in the boot of the 212.
No
and
way.
I'd skate up the road to Peter's office every morning, Monday to Friday, Saturdays and Sundays where needed. And that would be it. I'd be back in Belfast in the evening for say 6 or 7, and I'd be in the limelight at 8. That was just the life you lived.
I suppose we should tell the good people out there that there's, I suppose, an example of two things. One, somebody being in the right place at the right time.
Yep.
And two, that people should know out there that rural people tell the whole world what's going on in their life.
Yep, they do.
It's usually over shops. Here, did you hear, how's your wee one doing? Oh, sure, he's just sat an hour and there's nothing sure there's a queue of 10 people waiting in the same croissant server straight after. But that's rural life. So when you were in with Peter and Schism, because now, I'll from what I seen was that it was a promotional company. It was also a publishing company. It also had a music management end, it also had an events sort of.
Yep.
Isn't that right? So
it
far,
did, yeah.
And because I remember being down to Peter and like. At the time, having a lot of rough trade records,
Yep.
Joe Strummer, and there was a lot of people at that time who could name. So, and I know he had worked with, you mentioned Dolly Parton, so I think you would have probably thought you were in heaven there.
Yep.
And so he had worked with Dolly, I think, and different ones. So just tell the people out there, like, I suppose people are thinking that's the type of company you'd maybe get in the middle of LA or in the middle of London or the middle of maybe even Belfast now, but like yourselves at Oh Yeah.
Yeah.
But here it was in Maghera.
It was.
So tell the people, what was your roles then and how did you start to find out more about the industry?
Yeah,
You know?
Peter was a great supporter, and like I'm so grateful to Peter and always will be, and love him to bits. Peter was really, really good at just giving people a start, which is all you needed sometimes. And he helped Jimmy Devlin, who went on to manage General Fiasco and does great work at the BBC.
Joe Dugan worked.
Joe Dugan worked
For people
there.
out there wondering who Joe Dugan is one of the, I suppose, power bases in Northern Ireland now.
Yeah.
Working with Shane.
He
and
is, yeah.
all the big gigs in Belsonic and Custom House, and then you have the Ormo Park gigs as
Of
well.
course,
So
and a great lad. And Paul Clegg, who's now a New York resident, but Crosslands buses. And Paul manages a range of artists as well. So Peter gave everyone like that kind of their start.
Yeah.
And there's a band.
People should, just when you mentioned there, sorry for interjecting, Crossland, which is a touring company, still within South Derry area. So you had
Out in Swatra.
Yeah, Swatra, Maghera and D-Town. So here we were on wee LA, aren't we?
Honestly, it's incredible the things that happen though that maybe people next door to the building won't know what's going on there. But Peter just entrusted me with things, Paddy. I think probably I shouldn't have been entrusted with because it was kind of going.
But that's
what he's supposed to do.
Learning,
It is.
And I mean sometimes in the world of like an element of knowing. And then an element of having to take a chance on something, and then an element of learning mistakes in it,
Totally.
and then an element at the time comes where we'll get to after, and that's here where you are now. So it's important for people to know that.
Well, I think I can probably be sure at that point Peter knew I wasn't mucking about, and I certainly wasn't part-time in my mindset or whatever. I was very clearly determined to like make something work. So I hope that maybe went some way to this reason that he gave me projects that were just. Like at the time,
do you want to speak about any? Like, tell people what age you were then.
Yeah.
And if there's some you don't want, well, just speak about one that you felt. I'm positive about this. I've done a good job in this.
Paddy, it was unbelievable some of the stuff that used to happen. But I'll tell you one. So it was 2004. So at that point, I've just turned 18, and Tom Waits released an album called Real Gone on a record label called Anti that's part of Epitaph. And also the Black Keys that year brought out a record called Rubber Factory. And Peter gave me those records. I remember them coming into like in a big box into the office and be like, and I'm still catching up on who all these people are because I didn't have that repertoire at home. I'm having to learn all this for myself.
you had a band Meatloaf.
Totally. If it had to be Meatloaf, I'm like, I know what that is. That's big. But like Tom Waits, I was still catching up with that knowledge.
A great artist.
But all these big box of CDs come in, and Peter was like, so that needs to go out, to all the PRs in Ireland. And I was, at that point, I was being trained up by a guy called Mike Barr. Again, lovely chap, give me all the time in the world to try and learn what he did, because he was leaving the company.
A musician too.
As well. And just a lovely chap, and runs Star Car Hire now. So again, he's gone off and done really successful things as well. So anyways, Mike kind of trained me up, but it stopped with me on the Tom Waits record because Mike had gone at this point. So I remember, Paddy, I'm sitting in this office in the middle of Maghera getting phone calls.
A massive star music in front of you.
And I had in front of me, Tom Waits will do a 20-minute interview in Ireland with the biggest outlet. You decide where to apportion that or whatever. So I remember I had Dave Fanning, who's like radio royalty in Ireland, and Tony Clayton Lee, again, like journalistic royalty. I know that now. At the time, I probably didn't know that as much as I should.
You didn't know Dave Fanning, how big he was? Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So I had to learn all of that. So again, I'm just on the phone and Dave Fanning's telling me that he can dedicate like a 2-hour slot on his radio station, plus the front cover of Hot Press, the biggest music publication at that point.
And at that point, Hot Press, people should know, was selling thousands of
massive
copies. Yeah.
And then you had Tony Clayton Lee, who was doing the Irish Times and the Ticket, and that's a massive circulation. Well, so I'm sitting there having to balance all of this up.
What people should know too, friend, is that in them days, that radio and the press outlet was massive to get huge to get coverage. Huge.
And Tom Waits was a massive star who booked the arena and sold it out 5 nights in a row type thing. So like, you had to give the right kind of guidance as the PR on the ground in Ireland, and thankfully it all worked, and
Brilliant.
they were really, really happy with it. Paddy, I was 18,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to navigate those types of things, and I'm just grateful now it worked out, because there's really good music at the mercy of kind of whatever decisions you make. So
because you were and that's what people should know out there. Whenever there's an implementation of a new product or a new release, or it could be anything, like a gentleman Mike you're on about there, he would have been using the same principles that he was working under Schism when he went to his hair company. And so for you, at 18, you mentioned a few people there, like Dave Fanning. At that time, the Fanning sessions were huge, and all the big bands that went in through him, the big, we don't have to name them, the massive bands, the Sinead O'Connors, the U2s, they all went down, Thin Lizzy, all went down, and the Cranberries, all in the famous Down Under the Ground studios. Yeah. So how did then the response come after that for you? Like, I suppose, like, for being 18 years of age, I mean, I can imagine it was you see, I think sometimes if you think too much when you get older, you think too much, I can't do that. Well, when you're maybe younger, you just go, fuck it, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it. And you know what actually happened there? You actually started your first line of what's the most famous thing of all, I think, in anything we do, networking.
Totally. Like, and you're starting to learn how the rules of engagement are, and like how you conduct yourself and whatever. I knew from the very start of this, Paddy, I wanted to be taken seriously. Like, I knew that. I knew it was really important.
But you've got the confidence, you know.
Like, and again, like, I think it was like the mindset of all of these different influences, and I keep harking back to like the Pink thing, where it was a very unapologetic, like, you do you kind of like, you just move forward, you kind of just don't listen to the haters type like mantras. Those things serve you well whenever you're stepping outside the box. But
haters sometimes offer nothing but blibbers, and it's like I was talking to someone one time, and there was, let's just say, there was the talk of that moment, and but as I said, when people throw snowballs just melt. So it's kind of, I know it's hard at the time and it's annoying at the time, but at the same time, I suppose it builds a better framework for yourself. Would you say?
But you know what? I have to be honest. Like, whenever I say like the haters or whatever, it was probably me in my own head thinking, you're not qualified to do this. You don't know what you're doing.
You're doing the rural thing. Wonder what everybody else is thinking.
Possibly.
And it's not, that's just maybe, that's, I don't know, I think it could be universal. I don't know if it is, where it's sort of, everybody else is thinking of this and that and that. But maybe when you get to a certain age and you analyse stuff, you don't really think like that. You just kind of go, there's like at the minute, if you looked at it, there's yourself, your partner, and your wee loved ones. So if you know that effect, do you know what I mean? And so then when you were a Peter, then your next progression, like, you seem to have a good learning with Pete, and and also because I remember he also ran the Elk for a while.
He did,
because we done the Buzz Bar with the G sessions. And as I say, I always had to avoid him when I was offering getting me sandwiches. Sorry about that, Peter. No, you did give me sandwiches. But from that there time, because I know that Peter and his brother changed. They sort of went into like another form of promotion and events and all that there. So you then, you were saying like you went from Maghera to Peter's place, and then it was small town America. Was that your next? There
was like a branch between all of that, and that branch is called Fighting with Wire. So Peter signed Fighting with Wire to his management company, and I was again just turned 18 whenever all that was kind of happening around this as well. And Fighting with Wire were going on tour, and I was like, get me on tour, because if you understand, all the gigs I was going to, they were artists arriving into cities, doing the show, leaving and going, and
you didn't see the other side.
I didn't see the other side, and that was fascinating to me. So I remember Peter sent us out just going, right, Charlene's going to handle the money. There was no money to handle. That we were losing hand over foot. So all there was for me was opportunity just to learn again at the cold face. And Paddy, those were just the best days. Like, I can't explain it.
Cahar said to me when Cahar and Hansi ran speaking, they're saying that, like these idiots just arriving and they like to turn the music up to 10. I remember being out with them one time. I don't know if they were all deaf or just, and it was a bit of a Wayne's World setup.
Yeah,
everybody was drumming and
it's a good visual.
Everybody was drumming, drooling and having the crack. But so Cahar says, it was a big shock, I'm sure, for your own mammy. These Highlands arriving and shouting, and I think he says your mammy said to look after you, and he said, "Don't worry, we'll look after." Well,
is that what he said? That's what he said. He said.
He maybe says, "Don't you bleep and bleep."
Do you know what he said?
All right?
This was a joke for my mum, dear lover. Like, I'll never forget this night, Paddy, because they arrived down off the Glen Shane, hot off Derry City, in a 3-seater transit at the front, and then it's blocked off at the back. And obviously
right.
There's 3 in the band, so you've got me, which makes 4. And in the back was an armchair from one of their granny's old houses or something. So whoever was in the back was in a black box, travelling at whatever speed up whatever motorway. So I remember Cahir jumped out of the van and pleasantries to my mum, and then slid the van door open going, "Get in there, you wee witch."
That's it.
That's what he said. And I remember my mum just, because, fighting with wire and all, they were about 10 years older than me at that point, just slightly under that. So she was freaking out, as you would imagine.
I know.
So it was all a big leap of faith for everybody. And my ma probably didn't sleep a single wink that whole 2 weeks that I was first away. But Paddy, it was the making of me. Like, I'm so grateful for all those kind of
wee nuggets.
Like, it opened my eyes and gave me focus in different ways. And the experiences of just being on tour is a unique experience, and anyone who's experienced it will know that. And the bonds you form in that are just so strong, and everyone looks after each other. Like, you go on tour, you take care of each other. Those are the baseline. You don't even need to say those things out loud.
It's extended family sort of attitude. And what people should know out there is you were 18 years of age. Credit to you, to be honest. And the fact is that you went out, and I suppose what you were learning there was you were learning the game of, we have to fill the van up with diesel again.
Yep.
We need to get something to eat. What'll we eat? We need to keep going. And all of a sudden, whatever food's been ate is probably not the best food to be eating. And you learned that what it was like to come up to meet bookers. You learned what it was like that how sound checks are done, because you would have been arriving at the G sessions, everything was ready. Yep. That's what I always say about people should always take the understanding that the band just hasn't arrived. They've been there a good while, and they've travelled maybe half a day, if not a day.
Yep.
And so you were learning all that. You were learning, I suppose, what it was like to arrive at places, what it was like trying to sell tickets. You're artist manager now. For any young people out there that might be thinking, because it's something that's come up a lot. I was talking to Keith Harkin about it, and Keith was saying about, like, away from the podcast, is on about, you set a tour up and you have everything in place, and then people say, you don't really need a tour manager, and others ones go, you do, and then all of a sudden when you get the logistics of why they're there, and the weight that takes off the band is huge. Like, as he says, like, you're travelling on highways in America maybe half a day to 2/3 of a day, and then you're having to approach yourself, Cheryl, in the book, and everything that's going with it. Well, for people out there, do you think it's a role that people should look at as females in the industry? Is it something you're noticing more of? Because at the end of the day, you were unofficially the agent, the tour manager, the booker, because you're approaching it all. So what's your thoughts on that out there now? Or?
At that point, whenever I was heading out of the band, like, I stood out because I was a girl. Like, that, there's no two ways about that. I wasn't really encountering other female tour managers on the road. Like, quite the opposite. Every night was another guy band, it was another guy tour manager, and that was all fine because everybody was very nice. I didn't really face many problems, but that's really daunting prospect for some people, and some people are just not comfortable with it. I think I'm quite lucky that a lot of my friendships pre any of that I've lots of friends that are boys. Like, so maybe that being around male dominated environments, I didn't find as intimidating as someone else might. But it's definitely
because you were it was just a norm growing up. You're saying.
It was a bit like that. Like, I had one brother, my 2 best friends were 2 fellas. My cousins at that point, were mostly boys. So, like, I was okay with that, but it is daunting if that's not your experience. Now, I will say I have experienced it getting much better. And, it'd be remiss of me not to say that I didn't have a lot of bullshit to deal with. Like, Paddy, I got misconstrued as the groupie, as the the cleaner, anything but a official member of staff.
But that wasn't coming from your internal team. That was coming from external.
Just how you were perceived. If you were the girl in the room, that you were the girlfriend of one of the musicians or whatever. And I used to get really frustrated at that, of course. But the band that I was with totally were cool and understood that, and they didn't circulate that type of information. Like Cahir was always a great supporter of mine at the start, and very much backed the fact that I was their tour manager, would introduce me as their tour manager,
because you took time out of your time to do it.
Because and again, just for the record, you weren't getting paid to do that at this point. Like, you were just out because you lived and breathed it, and you were absolutely delighted to be there, so there was lots of challenges. But as I say, see now, like, any young women listening to the podcast, like, there are female tour managers out there, more in plenty than there ever was. And to be honest, hard to beat a female tour manager. Like,
organised.
There's
everything's in time.
Some of the best people I've ever encountered who are deeply capable and just have that whole thing, the whole sequence of like emotions, requirements, skill sets that you need to run a really good tour. A lot of females. And actually, there's a girl from up the road called Emma who is tour managing Hot Chip and just one of the bands, but she's from somewhere in Northern Ireland. I'm not going to say where because I'll get it wrong, but I brought her in a few years ago to the OES Centre to talk about that because I didn't know about Emma, so it's amazing how many people... So you're talking
another country girl?
Another country girl, just absolutely out there doing...
Rural massive. What do we say? Rural massive. It's there.
And again, an absolute sweetheart and deeply capable and just nailing it. So, if you're really interested in tour management and you understand the sacrifices, right? Because it does require sacrifice. Yeah. You're away from home a lot. Long days, like 18 to 20 hour days sometimes. And having to be enclosed with a certain amount of people. Totally. It requires a whole range of different kind of like skill sets and dynamics and tolerances. So it's not for everybody, that's fair to say. But if anybody's inclined towards it, like definitely the way to get into it is just to start turning up maybe at gigs. There's a lot you can do to try and figure out what it might be like before actually jumping in the van, I think sometimes reaching out to venues if they've got gigs on and asking, can you even volunteer? Can you do whatever you can to get closer to the action? Yeah, to see how it works and as you say, to approach the booker that's in the venue and maybe just look what happens and the whole structure of getting artists on and how they're looked after. That's it. And all with it. Well, that's really good. So the likes of that transitional moment being Fighting Aware, at that time... Fighting Aware, then after Peter, a lot of I suppose the acts would have got support then for your next role, which was Small Town America. Yep. So I should say to people out there, Small Town America was run by Andrew Ferris, a fierce advocate for all things independent. Maybe someday he'll come down and chat to me about it all. But what we will say is the label I think started wasn't it 2000 if I'm right. Around? Yeah, so it wrapped up in 2020, and it was 20 years old at that point. So yeah, good maths, Paddy. So 2000, and I didn't even get that in my year, no? I got that myself. Unreal. It's remarkable. I sat up all night reading up knowledge about you, so that's why I look tired. Sorry. And it's a remarkable story. And the likes of... So Andrew set up the label and it was all about independence, that just going back to nearly links into what we're talking about there, Charlene, about the being on the road, fierce independence, t-shirts, product on the road, sell on the road, maybe even record on the road if that's the case. So Andrew had a band, Jet Plane Lantern, people out there, a lot of people would have known about, and then would have had connections, I should say, back in the day when I was up in Derry living to a band called Cuckoo. Signed to Giffen back in the day, which was at that time around Derry, there was a lot of eyes and ears of the industry coming in. And I remember the night that I think Giffen came into, I can't remember the bar in Derry, but it was there. And Andy Kearns was there from Therapy. Very good. So he had appeared up, and because at that time there was it comes in fluctuations, as you know, Charlie. There was a lot of interest. Cuckoo were there, Stum, another great band at the time. Whole Tribe Sings, Paddy Nash's band. All these guys were all about the one time. And do you want to talk about then how you moved from Peter and Schism
up to small town America?
Yeah, so I was about 6 years into tour management for Fighting with Wire. And Paddy, I paid the bills, in between tours, because you did it for the love. And I worked in a wee sandwich bar in Belfast, and it was a Donegal man ran it. So he was very sympathetic to me needing to jump out for 6 weeks.
We should say that to people out there too.
He was, because, you pay your rent because you're on tour, but then you're off tour and you need a roof over your head. So John used to be very sympathetic to my need to dive off for 6 weeks and then want to come back to a job. So bless John, I don't know what would have made work if it wasn't for him. But anyhow, I remember I was on...
John, the sandwich man?
Yeah.
John...
Good, solid man. John, wherever you are.
John,
I hope you're well.
John. There's 4 Johns.
Yeah, that's him.
4 Johns. We love you, and you let Charlene out that time. So maybe the moral of the story here is if you're young and you're trying to get into the music industry, always have a wee backup. Find
yourself a good John. That's what you need. But anyway, so I remember I was in the van with Fighting with Wire, and at that point they had they'd been working their ass off, Paddy. I had gone out on the first ever UK tour with them, and we played to 20 people, we played to 50 people. It was really nothing more than that, and that was good for where the band were at. They were only new, nobody had heard of them, so that was fine. But the band had built it to the point that we were going to Wolverhampton, we were going to Glasgow, and they were playing to between 250 to 500 people depending on the city. It was a massive buzz.
That was really good.
They were on a head of steam. But whenever you start to rise to those different types of levels, new pressures start to emerge, and you start to then need more support. So Small Town America were releasing Fighting with Wire records, and Atlantic were in the mix at that point as well. But I remember being in the van doing the old tour manager bit on the phone to a promoter, and then overhearing Maghera on the phone to Andrew about, and this needs done and that needs done, and we need that. And so I'm starting to build up all this knowledge of what a record label does. How do they act in this kind of ecosystem of what we're trying to do, and how does it make sense? And I was really interested in it.
Yeah.
So
that was your next phase then?
That was it. Yeah. And it was purposeful on my part. I remember sending Andrew an email and just saying, Andrew, I've no experience in a record label, but I can just tell you, I'll do the post office runs. I'll take all the CDs and t-shirts that need posted, and I'll stand in the queue of the post office if it saves you an hour doing the things. And so Andrew kindly took that on, and we had a meeting, and he was just like, listen, do you want to try and see how you get on? And that was it. I was in Small Town then for 6-7 years, and part of just a really, what I found really exciting time for the label, because we expanded. During that time I set up the publishing division whenever I was there, because the whole principle of what Andrew was about that I shared was good music needs to be heard. We felt really impassioned about that. So whenever you boiled everything down as to what was going right, what was going wrong, we were getting music out to people, and that's all that mattered, know. And we were learning a lot as we went along, and I was learning huge amounts from Andrew, because as you say, he had the label experience from Geffen. He also had set up Small Town America, and ran it for 10 years before I had become involved and stuff like that. So he had all this just incredible knowledge, and I was just so eager to
and contacts, you'd imagine.
Totally. And I was just so eager to be useful in that scenario. So I just worked my ass off and had the most amazing support and guidance from Andrew. I wholeheartedly love Andrew Ferris, and he remains a really important friend today. Because again, that was another significant changer for me, joining Andrew and working with him for that period of time, and building a friendship with him, and I'm really proud of what we managed to do. We did some far out things. We signed bands we never signed. We started to sign bands outside of Northern Ireland, where we just thought they had the principles that suited Small Town America.
I suppose, and in that sense there, that meant that the brand and the visual appearance of Small Town America had travelled. I know I read there were bands from the States, and there was UK bands, and I suppose a lot of people don't know the likes of Ryan Veal, early stuff, all that, most Derry acts, and I've seen in the past, the Bonnevilles, I mean, the list goes on and on and on, and Little Bear, who become Ports now, I think. So I suppose for artists from the city, it probably was great to have that sort of, I suppose it's like Liam Craig was on with Row, and Liam was saying about, just like yourself now, the whole planning of something released. And whereas there's still that attitude over here that I rang you the night and say, Charlene, my album's out tomorrow. Could you come down and watch me gig? Do you see what I've done there? and you're sorry, just my gig. I'm going to do it tomorrow. I've just put it up online. I'm so excited. Look! I put it up on Facebook, and it disappears. All that money investment, and I think when you look at independent labels like Small Town, that would have been watched vigorously. I'd imagine the budget, and also too, what people should have known was at that time a lot of bands in Northern Ireland, they didn't have any agents.
No.
So do you want to explain about that too? That you had to become this.
Yeah.
You weren't an agent. Don't get me wrong, right? I know because I dealt with yourselves. So but you worked. You had to work like an agent because the bands maybe you were dealing with that didn't have agents. If that's all right, and some of them did, and then. Maybe you didn't keep them around. That's just how agents work, I suppose. It changes all the time.
It can be difficult. And actually, I think that experience is what precipitated my step into artist management, was working with Small Town America and understanding the frustrations of maybe a record label. If you've got this really shit hot record that you're so keen that as many people as possible hear, but yet your band are struggling to get booked because they don't have an agent. So what do you do then? You just have to step in. You just have to get it done. And Paddy, it's really tribal means. There's no magic in it.
No.
Get on Google and start figuring out what venues the bands that you like played in, and then ring people. And I used to ring people in every corner of the UK going, do you have availability on this date? This band's coming in. We just want to get them in front of people, whatever. So you just stepped in. You had to do it. And it's certainly not rocket science, but it's a lot of people are put off by it because it's not easy. There's a lot of effort sometimes and it just doesn't come through. And try and get a 10-date, 20-date UK tour all lined up where the geography works out, where, it all works in sequence is a task in itself. And that's why agents are obviously very important if you can get one. Yeah.
I suppose people should know out there all of a sudden you were with Peter and you were learning a certain part of the industry. And then all of a sudden, so on one side you had these products to push out, and then you went up to a place that you had to, I've got a product, but I have to market it. I have to get the people to hear it. I have to set up radio interviews. I have to set up gigs. I have to figure out how much it's going to cost. I have to figure out, can we bloody get there? I have to figure out what if the van breaks down. And because all of a sudden, it's surprising how quick people will ring somebody when they could maybe sort it out themselves.
Yeah.
Right? So you went then from to Small Town, which I think at the time, you'd have been there at the City of Culture time.
I was, yeah.
Do you want to speak about that for artists? Because I know at that time you would have been, I've seen Little Bear would have been with you, that became the Ports.
Yeah.
Because they had a great year that year.
Of course they did, yeah.
So do you want to talk about that year in the city? Because you would have been there, and I know it was exciting all around. The time soap was discovered and all the rest.
Incredible. That was a magic moment in the city, no doubt. And I feel just really grateful to have been able to get to know the Little Bear guys that, then, formed Ports. That moment is soundtracked by them for me. That's kind of where I hear it and see it and remember it. Because I got to know those guys really well through working with them in Small Town America.
Really nice guys.
The best people. I can't say enough good about them.
All
and deeply talented.
Songwriters in their own right.
Yeah, of course, Connor Mason's.
Yeah. Oh, amazing.
Solo material is just worth anyone's time and ears. And I encourage.
The world should listen.
Yeah,
Tell the world what ad break, right? Ad break. Go, Charlene.
Connor Mason is just worth every minute of your time. He's just really. He's a true artist. Yeah. And I'll always struggle to have the right words to place on him, but the music matters and it's really powerful, and he's been doing it.
It hits you.
It does. He's put out beautiful records. Yeah. Just Google Connor Mason, seek him out. But Ports are just one of the most musically talented groups that I've ever experienced. And I remember the first time then Little Bear played the Black Box in Belfast, and just the ripple effects of that around the city. Everybody was like, oh my God, who's this band? And they were selling it out really quick. And that's really powerful because that's hard to do.
Yeah, it is.
Especially if you're not from Belfast. If you're a Derry band coming down over the mountain to sell out a Belfast show, within your first one or two times playing, that's a big
There's
thing.
Something. But like General Fiasco, isn't it?
They did it. But there's countless other amazing bands that just never quite managed to kind of do that, or even in that short space of time. So the City of Culture year was incredible. It was, but even just walking through Derry, it felt.
But the investment and
it felt encouraged. It felt confident. It felt just like it's always been a vibrant city full of the best people ever.
Great people.
unbelievable people with the best sense of humour in the world, bar none. So it just felt like it got
best sense of humour next to their neighbours, us down here.
Right,
and
fair enough.
And we're all from
because we're great crack. But I like city culture was class. Like, I was really lucky to be so well anchored within the city, within an organisation like Small Town America, and all that was going on. So it was really bloody exciting.
I thought it was deadly, and the reason I'm bringing it up is that I know that Belfast, where you're based now, is going for I think it's the UNESCO City of Music. I sometimes now where we're at the minute find that extraordinary, to be honest. But so what do you think? What's your thoughts on that? Because the reason I brought up the City of Culture, I could see what was happening there. I could see that. I don't know when it happens in Belfast. Does that mean, like in Derry, like the Marty McGill, the Music Promise, where young people like in the OEA can get support and the programs and gigs? Or do you want to talk about that? Because I'm sure you're involved in it. I know you're involved. Charlene maybe is involved.
The OES Centre is a key music space within the city of Belfast, and all I'm hearing, right, is that UNESCO would be a wonderful accolade to put upon any city, right?
Especially like for a Mercury Prize.
It's just like saying it's a music city. But I'll be honest with you, it's a music city with and without it, right? It is. Ireland is a musical land, okay?
Ireland's heartbeat is the rhythm.
With or without whatever accolades. But one of the things about accolades like UNESCO is really, really important is I feel like music, as you say, lives and breathes in this land because I work in it. Yeah. It's my day to day. And I think where we're at now, where you're looking at, post kind of pandemic world, and we're starting to get back to normal, and you have to look at how the music industry is still tied up in red tape, and a lot of my friends still aren't able to work. A lot of venues that would have had capacities of 300 are now having capacities of 60. Music is not back. Every other industry seems to be. So, having a UNESCO focus where music is given its due focus probably isn't a bad idea, given that I think music deserves all the support in the world because of what it does for people, what it does for communities, what it does for individuals, and also legacies. Like, where would our legacies be without, the undertones, without soak, without, Van Morris and all the creative energies that have been born in this land and have reverberated around the world. So I would love...
And reverberated in some of the biggest bands in the world. Like we've created some great guitarists, Gary Moore and Vivian Campbell. And another man travelled the world.
Eric Bell,
Thin Lizzy, the whole... And as you say, that landscape... I suppose, is it important now then, if for my thinking and just to understand about it, will it help people on the ground, like centres like yourselves, or is it something that is just, I often say, like jamming the lips, and there's no scone and there's nothing, there's no tea, there's no scone, there's no apple pie or nothing, it's just this thing. Because I think at the minute, as you said there, it's important that we bring up, you can go for all the accolades you want, but if you're only allowed a third of your people on, what...
Totally. And
do you think now that from that, maybe it's a time that, I know that like there's not that many new music venues as such in the north, and I think is it time for like an investment in them to sort of go, look, we can open up here, but I suppose we're going to take a hit of 70%. It's tough. And then the 30% they might say, I'll not turn up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? They could be the 10% that doesn't turn up to your sold out show, because it always happens. People, something might happen at home, or the crack. And so, what's your thoughts on that then? Like,
help is needed, Paddy. Like, there's no doubt about that. Like, it's a struggle. It's always been really hard to do the independent music thing in the country, because again, it's not really perceived in the way I think it should be perceived. Some people have perceptions around it being a hobby project and whatnot, and it's not. I think through the various movements, through the pandemic, people have been shown that there are thousands of people who are actively employed within the music and associated industry.
Look at the amount of entries, I should say, not applications, or what do we call it, into the Northern Ireland Music Prize. Like,
of course, but
the
even the arts.
albums, that's like, but the arts, that's what I'm saying too. It's very important, because just even sitting here now, you've got creative people on the Fleming, you've creative people in the studio, you know, and if you've been a creative person, and then there's me yakking in the background, you know, and you know, with all these people, and it's all part of this, you know, microism that's called creativity.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that it's maybe there needs to be more. You're totally right, because I think what the lockdown's showing is, I didn't even know there's as many artists out there, and maybe I didn't even know there's maybe as many short film makers. All these things are appearing,
Totally.
and not that people had to do work, but they were putting out content all over the place. So the likes of investment is what you're talking about.
Yeah. Like, and it's also like that, again, the pandemic has brought to the fore the people who always stay in the background, like the crew men and women, who are the people in the black that you're not supposed to see them in the line of their work.
Their lights are out. It's just they're there.
But you know, and a lot of them haven't gone to work now for 18 months and are actively going to miss out the more these kind of regulations are permitted upon venues and stuff.
Or not come back at all.
Yeah, completely. So
you know,
like reskill whatever that nonsense was. But so investment's definitely needed. But I also think it's the more that the creative arts is doing well, the better any city is for it, the better any region or town or whatever is for it. Like, all you need to do to unite the people of a town from whatever part they're from is to put on a really nice music event, and people come to it. More people than not love and enjoy music. So why are we not supporting it? I don't understand that. It is a cross-community project in its nature. Music is a great unifier.
It's intergenerational. It connects all genres of people. It doesn't matter where you come from, who you are, what you are. At that hour, at that evening, you are there and you're loving it.
Totally.
And it's important then what you're saying there that, well, I suppose what we're saying there is for a city to be vibrant, it needs certain infrastructures, and we all know that. And they are industrial, they are hospitality, they are health, and they are education. But it's also entertainment as well. And to switch that entertainment into the fact that the person sitting up in front of you that's performing has put a lot of hours in to be there. Totally. Same with the person that's maybe filming that show. And I think that's maybe the message we need to get out, that the creative industries in Northern Ireland, instead of talking about the PR darlings that we all know that they do out there, let's talk about what's happening now. Let's talk about how we can get gigs back, and not this, you know, because you're right there, because I was asked, when you open up, sure, the music's back, and I'm going, well, it's not.
It's not,
you
no.
know, oh, well, they'll mention a gig in Belfast. I said that's outside, and that's already been booked 2 years ago, you know, or whatever. But it's not. And what do you think needs to happen then I believe that venues should get an injection of money, not to hold them up or anything, just to try and get people back out. Completely.
Niall O'Nine actually, who's a really popular blogger in the south of Ireland, did like a few simple breakdowns that anyone could ingest, where it showed the cost of running a venue, like opening up for a gig and the associated costs versus their ticket price and what they could bring in, and it showed the deficit. And I think whenever you look at stuff like that, you go, right, well, clearly venues need help because their reduced capacities are not sustainable. So cash investment is needed for the immediate, but it's also needed for the long term, because creative arts take time. It takes time for that to become what, developmentally, you take Snow Patrol or whatever, and they were 10 years down the line before they were discovered overnight, and all of those different kind of development
and it looked
pathways.
as if you just come out of nowhere, doesn't it?
It doesn't happen that way, and even if you see a local musician or whatever and they're playing covers in a bar of whatever, that will be hours and days and weeks of preparation so that it looks easy. It's not easy.
I agree.
It's a learned art, and it takes time, and you don't get paid for the prep time sometimes. So I think it just needs to be trusted. And I think more money will only mean better for people. And that's the long and short of it for me. And venues are struggling, but venues are absolutely essential for the development of the world-class artists that we export out of here.
Well, the people paying, what we're saying, friend, is the people who are paying £100 to go and see X, Y, or Z at this stage had to play in the Dog and Hound, or the Cellar, or the Oh Yeah, or they had to play. And I think also too, the problem lies now is that for youth gigs and all, there's nowhere to play.
Completely.
And, so it's that's something I suppose needs to be looked at. And that probably leads me into where you're at now in the Oh Yeah Centre. Or Oh Yeah. How would they say it parsley? Oh Yeah. I don't know how they would say it parsley. Oh Yeah. It sounds quite good there. Oh Yeah. Instead of yeah. Oh Yeah. So you went from Peter, shot up through a small town, went through the city of culture, which was an electrifying time. Why I brought that up was, I suppose, I feel that sometimes, yes, there's a lot of things need to be looked after in life, but one thing I would say is a city that's energised and has got stuff going on is a city that people want to see. That's how we should, and that's important, and music does that.
Yeah.
And creativity and all the other different types of street performers. So, Oh Yeah, for people out there, is the only dedicated music centre in Belfast. So you would have Oh Yeah, and the Nerve Centre would have been the granddaddy daddy of it all. And then you've got here where we are, and we all kind of know each other and work together. So for people out there, Oh Yeah Centre, I suppose you could describe it. It'll be an ad break. You can. So Charlene's going to go. Let's go. And but for people out there, it's a multifaceted creative space. There's Start Together Studios run by Rocky O'Reilly. There's other business, as you would know. There's probably I know that I get my amp fixed from a guy that's in one of your
Leaf,
businesses.
Probably.
Leaf. And so it has incubation for businesses, and then it's very much about youth engagement. Is that right? And for music. And so what's your role within it then, Charlie? And I suppose it's like, what's your hats within it? Because for people out there, anybody working in a creative space, of probably about, Stella has about 20,000 hats that she pulls on now. So tell people what it's like for you.
So my job title in the OEA is talent development. That's what I do. That's kind of the name on my card. So that involves lots of different things, Paddy, as you say. Like talent development's kind of a really core kind of strand of what we do, because it's creating access to people. It's creating opportunities to learn, to grow. So I run a couple of schemes that are designed towards that. So one of them's called Scratch My Progress, and it's like an annual scheme, and we do a shout out for any artists who want to step into a new realm of development and who are ready for that. So we do shout out every summer, and we get lots of applications, and we go through who we think's most ready, promise, and whatever. And like some of the alumni on that are just my favourite artists. Gemma Bradley's one of them. Kit Philippa came through it. Just countless bands over the years. Lemonade Shoelace is a particularly new one. He just graduated this year, and he's now on one of 5 bands selected by Vans, the trainer company for a Europe-wide competition. Wildly exciting.
And that's just for people out there to know that I've seen that happening, I suppose the last 10 years, where you're seeing bands connect, or with closely. I mean, I think Two Door Cinema Club had a kind of a connection with a close company way back in the day too. So
Kitsune, that was their start. So
and that's their influencer, I think, to this day, isn't that right?
I remember they released that track on the Kitsune, was it compilation that started it, and then it was all just straight up in the air from then. So the OEA does a lot of good work. Again, the mantra for OEA is open doors to music. So I'm one of an extended team of really dedicated music lovers and fans who just want to make sure that people get the access and support they can. So my colleague Shan runs a lot of youth outreach and does lots of really designs lots of projects that help young people get the support they need.
Because her background was social work.
So she's coming at that with that sensibility, but is just one of the biggest music fans you'll ever meet, and absolutely has an encyclopedic knowledge of Northern Irish bands way back to the early 2000s. So I love Shan because she's just the exactly right person for that job. Charlotte obviously runs the OES Centre, solid Derry woman and the best person you'll ever meet. And again, just really believes in what we're trying to do, which is just keep the music alive and give as many people an access and opportunity, touch point within the centre. So it's a grassroots music venue. In normal times, we've got, gigs happening every day of the week. But the studio.
It's got the family atmosphere. But like, isn't it? You've got that connection to the people around you,
Yeah, and like everyone in there.
And you are seen as industry specialist, if you know what I mean. You do a lot of work with that. I suppose people should know that too.
Yeah, everyone in there is working their ass off to try and make sure that if a new band forms or a musician knocks at the door and wants something to take them from A to B, that we can try and do something in that's useful to them, be that signposting them, be that, introduce them to the studio upstairs, be that giving them their first gig. We've got rehearsal spaces in there that we try and make affordable because, that can be really prohibitive at the start of a new band's life. And as I say, Scratch is just one of the schemes we do that's completely free to access. But we try and make sure that whenever the artists go through that scheme, they come out the other end kind of knowing how the business side of it shakes so that they don't end up taking a wrong turn, so that they don't end up with this great idea that gets buried because they signed a really bad contract or they just didn't understand it well enough.
That they're sort of entrapped, you mean?
Paddy, that can happen to anybody at any point, So
we all know people from here that's happened to, and they don't need to be mentioned to say, but close to you maybe and close to me, I've known stories and heard stories about that. Heartbreaking. And do you feel that, even with the OEA Centre, that creative spaces like yourselves are supported, right? Because I know that it's quite, for us, it's kind of like, it goes back to what you said earlier on. Well, was it just a bit of crack? But like even last year, with Tierney and the guys, there was a short doc done, and the amount of creative people that Tierney had on the job, all creative people trying to get that next movement within the industry, and like yourselves, and the reason I ask that is because I think that from my point of view, the answer is maybe no.
Totally.
For the work output that's done, do you know what I mean? And I know that maybe there's some centres that can be better lubricated, let's say, or financed than others.
Yeah.
But do you find that difficult then? Because why I'm saying that is that like a lot of people will walk by here, and so they walk by here and they just think, Glasgowbury's always been there. Because they're young.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean by that? Right? So it's kind of like, and behind the scenes, we're wheeling away in the hamster, like you guys, keeping that door from going like that. So do you think it's important that specialised centres like yourself have more opportunity? Because I know that from me and people coming in, with the guys and all that, there's a film club going now with Tierney and the guys, and they're mad to get work going, but it's all about, getting it together and then getting it financed and getting everything going. But these are all people like yourself at a stage, all creative people, all got their degrees and whatever, but all trying to move into, I suppose, a system or I suppose a business model that maybe doesn't suit them all. I don't know if you get the same from the music end, but I'm just thinking that overall, I think there should be more supports for young creatives coming out, because what's happening is they're coming out and then they're leaving.
Of course,
So that all that knowledge is gone. Do you know what I mean by that? Do you know? So what's your thinking on I know there's some funders are good, but some.
No, Paddy, it's tough. And again, you find yourself telling that to young people, but also on the other hand, trying to say to them, but don't let that put you off, because it kind of, you can't let it put people off, because we're all working to try and make it better, right? That's kind of what we're doing. So we have to be honest with people that it's not easy, but we also have to be realistic that, if everybody just goes, oh God, that's really hard, and doesn't do it, well, what's the generation
Nobody
next?
will do it. Nobody will do it.
And that's the worst. That's the worst thing that could happen, which all of us are trying to work against. So,
because we'd go back, what's the word? It would retreat back.
Of course,
and all that knowledge would be lost.
Yeah,
and I think that's important. And I mean, I should say, from Glasgowbury's point of view, we will be working with OEA.
Yeah.
Through the Paul Hamlin Foundation for you guys, a great foundation, which is something. we're excited about, because it goes back to what you said earlier on, friend, about being rural and going to the city and going, whew,
of course,
this is, so I know we do the same kind of thing, but it'll be that exchange, and I think it's important. But from the OES point of view, and lockdown, what way have you worked it? Is it just all online or?
Yeah, like a lot of it, Paddy, we've pivoted because, again, what are we trying not to do to make the musicians or young creatives kind of suffer more than, we're all kind of suffering right now. So gladly, a lot of what we do, we've been able to put online, but crucial, like not all of it. Like obviously the heart of the OES Centre is our venue space. Like there's no doubt about that. It's the beating heart. It's the nucleus of everything. And the first gig that happened in our venue space was just a couple of nights ago. Or last night. Was it last night, night before? And that's since March of 2020. Like that's unprecedented. Like it's, and to be honest, it feels unforgivable almost, because like I've been in and out of that space now, and it's odd to see it.
Ghostly, is it ghostly?
It's just weird. Like it's not how it's meant to be. So you feel weird about it. But yeah, a lot of the stuff that we've been doing in terms of our outreach and our mentoring and stuff like that, we've just put it online because it's the only option we had at the time. And to be fair, like some of that's functioned all right, because there was a lot of fear, obviously, during the start of the pandemic. So we could never have been, making anyone feel any more fearful. So actually the whole being in your own home actually was an environment which allowed a lot of people to relax into it a wee bit more and actually ask questions that whenever they're in a strange environment, i.e. they're in our venue space where they've not been before.
They want to speak about it.
They want to speak about it, just stuff like that. So it had, like, I'll be honest, it hasn't been all bad. We found maybe stuff that we can take away from this that will work. But the one thing that remains to be an absolute issue is just the restriction on people being able to be inside a live music venue and standing. Seated is fine, but it's incredibly exclusive for certain genres of music, I would say. Whereas like I represent rock bands, and they're not getting booked for seated gigs, Paddy. Like nobody's booking that. So
if there's 1 ounce of hyperactive in it, you couldn't sit, couldn't you?
No, it's just not going to work. It just doesn't.
And how did the gig work for OEA then? Was it like one chair and then a space, and then
you have to have social distance. And so, say our venue is a typically 300 capacity venue, but right now we can have 65 people total in the space as per current guidelines. And I don't need to explain how that's obviously difficult whenever you take a look at the numbers and all of that. But musicians are starting to fill the place up with music again. I'm very grateful to them. There's and people, the 65 people who are in that room the other night were just so lucky.
They're lucky.
And will feel that way because there's a certain emotive environment around all of it now, because people have come through this realising how important music is to their well-being.
Yeah.
And
I think you're right there,
That's
because funny, anybody I've been talking to, like I've been out at the events we're allowed to go out there, have loved it. Like I was talking to one of the young tutors this morning. She was down at I think it was Belsonic last night at Derry Summit, and she says, everybody was just smiling, Paddy. Just kind of, just smiling.
Yeah.
And I says, she says, obviously she loves music, but she says it was just so good to be there with music. And I think that, I suppose, that's the message. And look, for people out there, just another thing they should know about your good self, you're also a manager. Would you like to speak about some of the acts that you manage, and because you've got some ones that are at the stage now and seem to be moving. Do you want to chat about that and how that came about? Like, I know it came about because if people are listening to this podcast, should know that you have gained a lot of knowledge over the years. Yeah. So now we're at the stage with laying out the black chair in the back of the van with Cacker and the boys and Greg. What's his drum?
Craig.
And what's his drum company?
Ava drums.
Ava drums. So it's the famous Ava drums.
Yeah,
we done an ad for him, so he doesn't need another ad because it's a massive ad.
It's great.
And it's been loved all over the world.
No more needed.
All over the world that ad's been loved. If I was a drummer, I'd be asking him now for a drum snare, but I'm not a drummer. I carried his hardware through Dublin, and I'm freaking half the size of him, but hey, that's life. I was a tour manager one day too, going back in the day, working class heroes.
Love it.
And so that was all right. So Tell us about some of your accents, Charlene, about who you manage now and what's your work like? Because I suppose you should ask the question within this, how do you juggle it all?
Paddy, it's a patchwork is how I describe it, and it just all moves around, and some days it feels like it's functioning, other days it feels a wee bit the wheels are coming off, but like it works most of the time, and that's enough for me. But so I set up Zero Myth Management in 2017 because at that point I felt I had amassed enough of the rounded knowledge of how this big operation called the music industry works and all the component parts and what you might need. So I thought, step into the ring, give it a go. And that was helped along by an artist called Kit Philippa, who is a friend of mine. And actually KP and I had been hanging out years before I set up the record label. And KP's one of the most uniquely talented but also kind and genuine people you'll ever meet. So KP had been planting these wee seeds and going, Charlene, you'd be good at management. Have you ever thought about that? And just things like that were maybe mentioned no more than once every year or a couple of years. But it kind of did a bit to build my confidence, because I have to admit, the reason why I didn't start this earlier was just a confidence issue. It was voices in my own head saying, you're not like you don't have the experience and all this.
You were hearing that voice. Like, remember that voice? It goes right back to when we first started and we were younger. You know, that's that voice again. You know, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an individual, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have that, but it's your ability to.
Everybody has it. Don't worry, that's the thing.
It's your ability to put it to the back and just you keep at the front and keep working hard.
Turn it to a positive.
That's it. And I've learned, I genuinely feel like I've got better at that as I've got a bit older. But I say KP and I were spent a lot of time, and I'll never forget this, Paddy. It was a moment that it'll stay with me forever. KP trusted me with their demos, and I was walking through Ormeau Park and I was listening to them. And on that day, the news that Donald Trump had been voted in as president broke, and my heart broke with it, I'll be honest.
Tango Day.
Awful. But on that demo bank was Kit Philippa's Human, and I was the adult walking through Ormeau Park with tears in my eyes because I just felt that song connected. And that's one of the things I love about music, and I've had that experience in the last couple of months with a new demo bank that I've got through from one of the artists I'm working with, where I'm like, oh my God, look at this. I actually I can feel it in my body whenever I hear this in my ears. So,
because that's part of if something really hits you, then that's the part where the manager, that's that connection you need, isn't it? It's not just about the music. It's
that's the drug, I think, and that's why I'm still in this 17 years later. That's a palpable effect. So I think that's why I keep doing this. Because
but you're well respected now, and people should know you've done a lot of panels for the big organisations in the UK, and so you are part of the industry now. Yeah, and I through the years, I feel like I've had lots of rich learning experiences, so I feel confident now that I can steer an artist in a direction that might work for them or that might best suit them. So that's how the management thing started. And first artist I signed to the management company was Kit Philippa, and we worked for about 3 years on putting out that debut album. Jeez. So that album took that amount of time, and that's not counting all the time that took KP to craft those songs. Some of those songs have been in the working for many years before that, but it took us that long to bring it all together with kind of consideration for you and for KP. And it was a big partnership. We spent countless hours together, day and night. There was no such thing as weekdays and weekends. It all just melded into one. Whatever was right for the project needed to be done, and whatever else alongside that became sacrificed. And that was just the reality. And I will always feel deeply grateful and proud that that was one of the first artist projects that I got to manage. But, word spread, and So you got part of the NI Music Awards? Yeah, KP won 2 awards, and did lots of really important things to them. Like KP's, a very grounded person, but wants the music to have its best chance and stuff. So I'm really proud of a lot of the reviews and outside kind of critical acclaim that record got. And some of the live shows that KP played to 20 people or 200 or 2,000 people just reduced people to tears. And it sounds like that's mad that's something you take away as a positive. But whenever music affects people like that, it's important, it's real. It's that emotional connection. Totally. And I think sometimes it's not how you get it, how your following comes about. That's it. So
as I say, the Kit Philippa project was a great kind of landing base for me on, you know, the introduction into my world of management. And it set aside principles of what I want to be as a manager and who I want to be and the type of artists I want to sign and stuff like that. So I sign with my heart. I don't think genre is the kind of restriction for me. It's like, a couple of questions. Do you love the music? Because that's always what keeps you going.
You have to.
Because, you know, human relationships get fraught in management because there's so much stress, there's so much expectation. So the thing that guides you back normally...
Want,
there can be, but what guides you back is the music. And then the music is as a result of the people that you're working with. And you just manage to make the psychology of it all work.
Yeah.
But if I love the music, great. But there's lots of music that I've loved over the years that I haven't worked with. Because the second question's really important is, do I think I can bring value to that?
Or work with individuals.
And that as well, Paddy, but it's more a case of like, do I have the contact set that can help that artist kind of move forward? Do I have the skill sets, you know, all of that? And that's a very introverted kind of viewpoint I have to take to just be really honest and do the best by that artist. So I've said no to managing projects that I still love and buy tickets to and own the record collection, but I just didn't feel like I was the right fit for the management head, you know? So
you still give in a piece of your time, but it's not all of your time.
It's you know, the management thing at the moment is like, I'll work with artists that I believe I am the right fit for.
Yeah.
And it's okay if the person thinks I'm a good fit and I don't think I'm a good fit. Neither of us are wrong, but it's just how we all feel, you know? So at the moment, the roster is carefully curated on things that I would literally die for. Kit Philippa, New Pagans, The Darkling Air, and very recently, Gemma Bradley.
There you go. Gemma, from this building here.
And I've got a big wide smile because I'm delighted to work where I adore her and I just believe in her, and I'm really keen now to get stuck in over the next couple of years.
Obviously, you're the right person because what you described there was the different artists, and some of them have dual roles. As I say, meaning by that, what I mean is that you see them as the artist, but they could be something else to do alongside it, which is the likes of Gemma, and. That's brilliant that I did hear that, and I'm really glad because that means that it's all local again.
It is,
and which is really positive.
Yeah.
And so there was a thing with all your acts. It's brilliant. But what about just before I move away from the management company, Charlene? Is it okay for other people to maybe send you some music or not? Or is that something, or where would you say to them, is there an uploader and is there somewhere they could send them to you?
Yeah.
Is that okay to say?
Of course,
Because there could be somebody listening here doesn't actually know that you're a manager, and they could be out there and going, you know what, that sounds really good. You know,
I make myself very easy to find online. So if anybody goes to www.zeromyth.co.uk, there's like a contact us sheet on there, and I read everything that comes through on that, you know. I'm really keen to hear new music because that's the lifeblood of what I do, and I'm a music fan first, so if it gets me really excited, you'll hear from me, you know. But I'm really proud of, like, as I say, the artists.
And you're not wearing a big scarf and all, which is cool too.
No, we keep it real.
Just keep it real.
Just keep it real.
It's country style. And so for people out there, just check online. You'll find, and your music management company is called
Zero Myth.
Zero Myth. So there's no myths, only legends. See what I've done there?
That's it, Paddy.
And that's what you are.
That's the tagline.
It's hashtag no myths, only legends. And so recently, friend, there was a poll done on Irish radio, and it was all about, I suppose, how many artists are being played, I suppose, from Ireland is a big thing. But it was all about female artists and the reasons for some of them aren't getting played. And I know you are aware of this report. Have you any sort of thinking on that? For someone like yourself has had so much experience in the industry and looking at it as a female working in the industry, looking in, going back to when you were 18, you were a bunch of big hairy men, cackering them, and you stuck it out, you came through it, you went into Pete and Schism, and then you went on to Small Town, and now you are an and an independent music manager with your own company. What's your thoughts on that report that came out about why things... What do you think? Like?
Yeah, the report, so Why Not Her is really valuable because it's data, not opinion, right? And whenever you look at the data, you can only derive one thing, that it's an uneven playing field. So you look at some radio stations on that report and they've only playlisted 100% males over the last 5 to 10 years or whatever. Like, that's shocking. Of course it's shocking. For any reasonable person, that's shocking.
And imagine running a sort of something that goes out on the airwaves like that there and not actually maybe looking at that. Now, as a devil's advocate, is that, because I don't think it is, because you mentioned earlier on there about there's nothing better than getting the CD. We talked about it coming in from the artist and all this here and the excitement of it. I would be able to think a good tune's a good tune, put it on, but obviously that's not happening.
Yeah, so, that's it. You can only presume that there is internal bias at play, that certain artists are being escalated. And I think the best example of that is clearly laid out whenever you look at that, one of the reports by Why Not Her. And, props to Linda and her team for the work they've done there, because it's a big data project to bring this into such a bite-sized focus where everyone can just look at it quickly and go, God, there's a problem.
Just for people out there, that's Linda Coogan-Byrne.
Yep.
And that report's out there, yeah.
It's out there. It's Why Not Her. If you just Google that, you'll find the report online. It's widely accessible now. It's had over 1 million hits. And Linda's continuing in her work. There's more reports to come, put it that way. But listen, a lot of us have had the suspicion that this issue's been here for a long time. But what Linda's done is actually demonstrated through data that it actually does exist and nobody's imagining it. So I think when you look at what
the most exact way she's done it, and that,
it's just the best way to present any argument is through data. But data can be so all-encompassing that you don't know what to be focusing on. Whereas you can get a snapshot through this report and go, oh, that's quite stark.
Yeah.
One of the best examples on there is Imelda May and Dermot Kennedy, both deeply, deeply talented individuals, right?
Yeah.
But that's a really good example of where the playing fields are not equal. So if you look at the radio rotation that Dermot Kennedy was getting on the lead up to his release versus what Imelda was getting on the lead up to her release.
Which was released 2 years earlier, isn't that right?
Yeah, it's shocking. And whenever you start to then pare it back and go, oh, they're signed to the same record label, Paddy. So there cannot be that Imelda's got like this baby record label and that's why she's on same record label. So what's the difference, right? Yeah. So it can be very, very challenging whenever you're obviously a female working in the industry.
And we're not saying it's the artist's fault here, right? It's not. No, it's not. It's just, it's obviously not. This is more about the radio stations themselves. Yeah.
There's internal bias at play. That's the only thing that I think you could reasonably conclude, because there's the music. The value of the music coming through from both genders is equal in my view. Yeah. So why are male artists being playlisted over female artists?
If we were sitting now and you're obviously speaking to the good people out there and other young female artists, and people want to be identified a certain way, what do you think radio stations need to do? Like, say say I'm Paddy FM, for instance. So you're coming to see me now. Tell me what I need to do.
Yeah.
What do I do? You know what I mean?
Yeah. The first thing is just accept that that's the data. You have to accept almost the past before you can move forward, isn't that? We come from Northern Ireland and we're still grappling with that,
I sort of putting your foot back and then putting you forward, and
that's
then,
it.
Yeah, and so it's and then like I was talking to Ro and the woman in Harmony as well. And so that you mentioned Imelda May was there, and she was saying that that's all continuing. Yeah. And that's they're still talking on their WhatsApp. They're still I suggested they should put on a festival. You know what I mean? And then maybe small to start, but if you've got them names, do it. Get the message out there. And I think if the message is out there, going back to what we talked earlier on about Jeff. The PR machine, all of a sudden it starts to roll, and they can't hide it. But in the likes of, do you think that's happening not just in radio? Is it happening in venues? Is it happening in festivals? Is it happening in VIP things, or is it happening all over?
There's definitely the put it this way. I think the lid has been lifted on the lack of female representation now, and that's ongoing work. And actually, I have to say, I'm seeing really significant progress in real time, but I work with the OES Centre on running the Women's Work Festival, Paddy.
Yeah.
And that's about 5 years in now. And that started 5 years ago because we were sick of seeing these headlines where it was festivals and 90% of the scheduling was males. And we were like, what's that about?
Because that was you and Charlotte.
Yeah, Charlotte started it and handed the baton to me.
Do you want to tell a wee bit about that to people, just so, because they'll not know, I know, and they might not know.
Women's Work's an annual festival that promotes women and the women on the stage and off the stage. So really, really important for us to kind of show that women do exist in those roles, because typically they haven't. And it's really important to show that to motivate younger women coming through to feel like it's possible for me to do that. Yeah. If I want to be the sound engineer, I can, because I went to Women's Work Festival and all the sound engineers were women. If I want to be a performer on stage, I can be a performer because I went to Women's Work Festival, and sure, look at how many performers were there. You kind of need to be there for people to see themselves in you before they can feel motivated. So
and you're also saying there, we should also say to people out there that this, because of the way the festival is described, doesn't mean that me or as a male or anybody can attend it. It's not about that.
It's not about that, Paddy.
It's about this looking down.
That's it.
This looking up as everybody.
This was our answer to the fact that a lot of festivals were overlooking women. We decided, well, we're not going to overlook women. Our audiences for women's work are mixed, male and females, and everything in between. It's like everyone's welcome, but the focus here is, well, we're saying there isn't a shortage of women because, look, we have a full festival full of women. Yeah. So what's the issue? Why are you not booking them?
Programming and using?
Again, programming. But I think, again, the issue with it was unchecked for years, but it's being checked now. Mm-hmm. And it is doing better because it's being checked. And hopefully in time you don't have to check it. That's the aim here, that you don't have to look at a festival and go, why is X, Y, Z not there? And there's representation for all genders and none. That, people feel that it shouldn't be a barrier because of your gender on any level. Yeah. That's the aim in all of this. But as I say, but
you're saying it's still totally inclusive. It's not a lift to anybody else. People can come in and everybody. Yeah. And
that's it.
And I suppose the message within that is that we're changing society. We're a more adaptable country than we were maybe years ago, and but how then. That report obviously was done for Irish radio stations. How do you think then in the UK it's going on? Like for you as a manager, and you mentioned KP there for you now. Has the world of big bookers been chatted to? Is what I mean, because obviously when Beyonce pulls into town, the damage is done. Everybody goes and sells out. And you mentioned Pink, powerful really. Yeah. So do you think the individuals that broke through? That were successful as artists, female artists, whatever way they want to be identified. For the sounds of it, it's been far harder for them to get there. Because I was reading about Imelda May's story somewhere, talking like that about she didn't mention any names, but there was a certain people could start at the same time as you, and you're thinking, God, they're away,
Totally.
I had the same crowd. I was selling out, at the same time, So how does the world of me being a booker, or you being a booker, or a festival organizer, or running a club night, or everything. We're talking all music here too. Yeah. We're not. That's why I brought the dance music, everything, and because you deal with it all. How do you think that it needs to be approached now? Or do you think that the dragon has flared its flame and it's burning some feckers out there big time, and other ones? Because I chatted to Ro about it. Sometimes festivals are programmed a certain way. Yeah. And you understand that anyway. Yeah. And so, what do you think about the UK and then maybe Europe? You know more about that than me. But
the reporting that Linda's doing actually is all across. So she's publishing reports faster than I can. The work is extraordinary, but. What we're starting to do now is just expose a few things, right? So that everybody has the opportunity to see what's going on. And then you hope from that things get better because people are realising, oh, I didn't know that this was as bad as it was. That's the whole point. You have to first show people the problem and then allow it to get better through the right actions afterwards. And I'm quite motivated by a lot of what's going on here because it's ultimately rooted in equality, which benefits everyone, right? Yeah, equality definitely benefits everyone. Yeah. So it's just the women that have broken through so far have done it with great gusto because they will not have had it. They will have had a different experience than their male counterparts, right?
Yeah.
That's a fact, okay? God forbid you're a woman in the music industry who has a pregnant body and has children, because immediately the perception can be, or historically has been, well, there's your career gone.
Yeah.
And actually, as
That's
a female...
terrible. That's terrible.
Well, as a... New Pagans are a really good example to talk about on that, because I adored Lindsay, who is the lead woman in New Pagans. Yeah. I adored her delivery of that, right? I remember we played Hard Working Class Heroes, and this was when her second child, I think, was born. And Lindsay played that gig 7 months pregnant, Paddy, and she wore a Sonic Youth t-shirt that was tight. I think she had a conversation with her mum earlier that day, and her mum was like, "Are you going to wear that t-shirt?" "Yeah, I'm wearing this t-shirt," right? And whenever she was on stage in the Workman's Club in Dublin and she did her like punk rock moves or whatever, the t-shirt came up and this pregnant belly fell out, and I watched the room in absolute delight. And one of the guys who was a curator for Spotify that night was in that room, and he fell hard for New Pagans that night. He thought this was the most punk rock thing he had ever seen, and he put them on playlists and did all of this mad stuff for them. But isn't that amazing that was the response? Because a lot of people didn't know what they were seeing, because there isn't many accounts of that, put it that way. Whenever women get pregnant, and actually I read Sinead O'Connor's book recently, and she had her first child just before she put out her first album.
That's right.
I just thought about how punk rock that was to even do that, because you're not allowed to do that, right? As a woman, you're not allowed to do basically
probably one of the strongest female spokesperson that has been for the last, no matter...
The original punk... Exactly. I love her. I love her. And she's been right on the money when people were telling her she was mad. Right on the money. So, as I say, we need to see more of that so that women feel that they can live the full female experience without being counted out for it. And we're not there yet, Paddy. Like, we're not there yet. And as I was pregnant in 2019 and had my kids whenever in 2020, and I had to fight against a lot of perceptions that, like, so is that you done now? Is that you done with the music thing? And like,
they thought slippers now and nappies, and you just disappear.
Is that it? Because music clearly matters so little to me that I'm just going to exit it.
Yeah, you're just going to throw all them multiple years of experience down the bin. I don't think so.
And if it's just the perceptions that follow you, even if you don't feel that way, you have to, explain to people, and that's extra, because. Again, I have lots of friends who now have children, and the boys who become fathers don't have that. They're back on the road within 2 or 3 weeks, and nobody bats an eyelid. Whereas,
well, that's interesting there what you're saying.
Whereas a woman has a lot more to contend with, even if she's happy to be back on the road. Like,
once you've got your mother and the child's there, and they say the child needs his mother, and all the things that go with it. I understand that, and the love and the separation and all that goes with it
completely
can be, I'm sure, quite tough.
Can be very tough.
Individuals, and even as males, some individuals having to tour when a child comes along, all of a sudden it changes the dynamics, and they want to know where they're going, when they'll be back, and all of a sudden they miss the loved ones.
Of course.
And that's how it is. Well, the likes of going back there to radio stations, is there any sort of because I would imagine it'd be hard to get. It's 50-50, isn't it? And the programming that 50-50. Well, what do you think is the best way to start on that? Or what percentage do we need to be looking at? Or is it something that needs to be built into policy? Or because there is some countries good at it, Canada's good at it. And I think obviously I thought the South was good, but maybe it's a bit to go.
I'm personally not in favour of quotas, right? Because I think that can be used as an instrument against people who are there through merit, being like, oh, you're just on there because it has to be 50-50. So I'm not a fan of that.
You don't like the shout. It's not about the shouting game. It's about equality.
It's about equality, and it's about quality. And as I say, I firmly believe that there are as many talented female artists as there are male artists, right? That's my belief. So I just think that radio stations need to reflect on the data that's there, accept that there has been failings, and set about improving that. Now, I'm not saying it needs to go from radio stations. They'll not immediately hit 50-50 targets, but there needs to be a long-term commitment to being representative and inclusive.
What we want to say is a good tune's a good tune.
That's it, Paddy.
And play it, and don't look at anything else but putting it on. I've listened to many tunes and demos over the years, you know, and sometimes something just happens, and there could be 10 bands the same, and you've went for that, and because there's something there. Is that right?
Totally.
You know, and so what we're saying out there, I suppose, is that it's starting to change in your world.
I believe so, yeah.
And so what is your plans then, now that we're starting to open up again? Because, you know, I should say, like, you know, listening to your story, it's been remarkable so far. You've loads of years ahead of yourself, and it's great you're staying within the industry, whatever way that shifts and forms, because obviously now sales isn't where it is. It's ticket revenue. It's all the syncing your music and all the things like that. So your toolbox is, if you were in a construction trade, right? You'd walk onto the site and they go, Jesus, boss, that girl there, she's some amount of tools, right? So they'd say you have a load of tools, right? And there's fucking drills and there's screwdrivers and nuts and bolts and everything. And I'm leaning down like this, and I love to be bolt out. So today I'm going to concentrate on the bolt, and I'm concentrating. So what about yourself? How do you, like, because you're obviously a full-time mammy, you're married, you have children, you're working, and you're managing your own company. You are a true entrepreneur. And how do you keep all the wee bits clocking over? As you say, I know it's like a tapestry, just for people to show that you can do it.
Yeah,
if you know what I mean.
Totally, Paddy. This wouldn't suit everyone like that. But again, the music industry can be a bit like that. Yeah. I found something that I feel works for me because it gives me enough scope to be effective. Like the why I do this is because I think I have skills that are benefits to musicians, right? Yeah. I think that I can help people navigate the industry in a way that's sustainable for them, so that they don't get ripped off or they don't sign into bad deals or whatever. I feel very motivated by that. So, like, how do I make it work? Well, I kind of just have to. Like, I just have to now at this stage. I feel like I'm too long in the tooth to want to go the other way or just get out entirely. So it's just like, I'm in it now. I'm staying in it, and if I can do anything, it's to bring other people in it too. And an interesting story I'll leave you with is, so I am currently mentoring another manager to bring them into the fore so that they can sign lots of other artists. And that manager is female, and she's from D-Town.
Holy smoking g'day!
And she's got an incredible future ahead of her because she's got all of the sensibilities that it takes to be a manager. Brilliant. All she needs now is a bit of experience, which is what I'm going to try and help her with over the next few years.
You're a star, and she, I think her second name might be the same name as the lady down in the room there, I think. But well, that actual lady has been plugged in the podcast before. What I would say to people is, go back to Jimmy Bradley's podcast and you might hear her name. She maybe was a good friend.
That's it.
So that's brilliant. And to show people out there that what you're actually doing now is that young individual that you're helping along now has probably been Google-eyed looking up at you the same way you were the first time you popped into the van with Fight Nowhere.
Yeah.
So brilliant. I'm going to finish it off with Charlene Hegarty. Star lady, it's been great having you in. I went through all my notes according to my ears. Have I? My ears are not even working. So, Charlene, thank you very much. And maybe in a few years' time, we'll get you back if I'm still breathing at that time, and we'll get you in again for a wee podcast. Give yourself a round of applause. I'll send you a massive hug from here.
Thank you very much.